Sorry We're Closed is a third-person story-driven survival horror game that follows Michelle as she's preyed on by a powerful demon that wants to date her. The game is available on PC, PlayStation and Xbox consoles, and Nintendo Switch. Atmosphere. From the very beginning, Sorry We're Closed has a dreamy, off-kilter feel. The music is lopsided and unsettling, and the world is filled with bright colours, vibrant characters with unique personalities and a buzzing nightlife feel to it, even before you begin engaging with demons. Michelle gains the power to click her fingers and open her third eye to see the demon realm, and the game has you switching between the two frequently. The design of both can be pretty unique, with the real world's urban untidiness juxtaposing the demon realm's gothic and sometimes metallic rustiness. In aesthetics alone, the game is very unique, with even Michelle herself in pink and blue contrasting heavily against the dark environments. What really gives the game its feel, though, is the dialogue and the themes at play, with unhealthy relationships being the main core of the game. Multiple characters are unhappy in both their professional and personal relationships, and there's a lot of uncomfortable dialogue and despair that comes from the foreboding feeling that Michelle herself, as well as other characters around her, will end up unhappy or worse if Michelle can't help them figure things out. The character dialogue can still be funny and entertaining in places, and characters are realistically portrayed despite the game's fantasy elements, but there's a lot of heavy themes and symbolism to express how dangerous unhealthy relationships can be, with violent characters hurting others as well as showing what the psychological damage can be in the long term. It gives the game this oppressive feel, that whilst not necessarily the kind of fear you experience when your life is at risk, it's the kind of fear you experience when your happiness is at risk. Sorry We're Closed has a very unique spin on what foreboding is, and it may not be for everyone, but it's refreshing to see something so different. That's one Harry Mason. Scares. A lot of the game's scares are conceptual, with the symbolic representation of dangerous relationships really being something that will speak more to some than to others. The game is happy to show you the horrible consequences of dating the demon that stalks you, with other victims being monstrosities with self-destructive personalities that turned into representations of the desires they had in life. It's scary to think about the consequences and damage relationships can do, especially when heaven, hell, demons, and angels are involved. Outside of this, the gameplay also has some tense moments with the combat. Michelle can stun enemies by snapping her fingers to reveal their hearts for extra damage and less ammo used, but she can only do this at close range, and this puts a fair amount of pressure on hitting the target, because if you don't, you're vulnerable to be getting hit back. And there's a fair number of close calls and some panic you can get as more complex and mobile enemies turn up for you to take a shot at. The combat and the concepts are all there really is in terms of the scares, and it executes both pretty well. Again, some might find this lacking, but it's really up to your taste. That's 2 Harry Masons. Sound design. Soft keyboards and uneven beats colour the game world. Sing-song type melodies, sweet and deceptive, paint a dream that's shattered by the demon realm's dark, dissonant and unearthly tones. Grinding sounds, whispering voices, and the deep rumbles in the dark. The soundtrack also has some vocal pieces which give an odd feeling to the boss battles. The game's sound effects can be pretty bizarre, with some of the guns growling after a reload, and the magical effects of slipping between realms feels pretty special. There's no voice acting, but there are vocal effects some characters give as they talk, laughing and gasping as reactions to the dialogue. There's some basic directional audio and reverb, but really there's not too much to the sound design, and its contents is unique and it gets the job done. That's 3 Harry Masons. Gore. There's some bright red gore in the game, and some again mainly conceptual things with transformations into disgusting creatures being on the table. The game's symbolism also sometimes uses gore to represent the emotional damage characters take, and this can be pretty disturbing when it's suddenly thrust upon you. There's not a great deal of gore in the game, but what is there is utilized really well. That's 4 Harry Masons. Story. The game begins following in the wake of Michelle's breakup with her previous partner, and she's now living a mundane life as a cashier. When she's visited at night by a demon that wants to date her, she's horrified by this but quickly swept up in a battle of the realms as her close friend Robin turns out to be a demon too. The game's story is pretty complex, with again relationships being the main theme of it. There's lots of choices to be made during the game to steer you more towards one of the game's multiple endings, and a lot of the decisions seem sometimes heavy and sometimes harmless, but they all have an impact that affect other things down the road. The game's dialogue is obviously where 90% of the story is, and it's all pretty great. The characters are all really well written, sometimes silly and other times endearing, as they tell you about their lives and try to give you advice on yours. The designs reflect who they are as people, and it makes it harder to say no to some people and easier to feel their plight even when some of their problems are self-inflicted and they can't see it. The story was pretty great and engaging all the way through. Making the final score 5 out of 5 Harry Masons. I wasn't expecting to like this game as much as I did going in, but I think that it rides a great deal of its horror and emotional themes on subject matter that might not affect everyone. Again, I'd like to remind you the whole thing is down to my opinion in horror games, and if you don't share this opinion, then that's cool, I get it. I'd like to point out that whilst I got loads of wowzers, I didn't date the demon and advise you don't either. There'll be more horror reviews in the pipeline, and thanks for watching. Always go check out Bumps in the middle of the night. Peace.